to round number 8 of ARL in F1 2020. And following on from a newly crowned championship leader in round number 7, we head to round 8 for what will hopefully be an interesting race in the Netherlands. Welcome along to the Dutch Grand Prix for the 8th round of the ARL World Championship. And as you can see, slightly damp session to get us underway in qualifying 1. And just a reminder as we head into this Grand Prix weekend, Q1, we have 19 drivers with us taking part. The top 15 will go through to Q2, so we lose 4. Qualifying 2 in dry conditions would normally see the drivers choose as ASMD spins and goes onto the grass, and that's how difficult and tricky it can be in these conditions to keep the car on the road. Q2 in the dry conditions would denote your starting tyre for the race, and then Q3 the top 10 shootout. 10 drivers going onto the track and trying to set the fastest lap time to get the best seat in the house for the Grand Prix. And Rick in the Renault is going to try and do just that as SNB comes into the pits behind him. Rick brings his Renault into turn 1. On this slightly long circuit, as Rick's going to get held up here by the Alpha Tauri, I believe, of Super Gabu. That will not do him any favours whatsoever. Might have got a bit of a slipstream from it, but it would cost him through the first few corners of the lap. It's a purple first sector because he hasn't actually, or rather no one else has gone through the first sector yet. Rick, provided he makes it, will be the first driver to set a lap in this first qualifying session. This 4.2 kilometre circuit, built in the 1940s and was then the centre of the post-World War II project for the Netherlands to try and bring tourism back into the country. And they built it here around the sand dunes, which is where the name Zandvoort gets his name from. As Rick crosses the line, sets a 1 minute 9.4 to open the account. Meanwhile then, here is Evil Hunter in Racing Point on an outlap at the moment, as Ribas goes second on a 121.1, so bit of a struggle for the Mercedes in terms of lap time. Of course, these are changeable conditions as Warrior Huntsman brings the Haas into the pits as well. Super Gabu just bringing that Alpha Tauri through the first sector, and a purple first sector as well. And after a rain-affected race in the Netherlands, it was Roberto Santo, Jack and Super Gabu giving us some really good action in the midfield. Super Gabu out-qualified his teammate Jack last time out, out-raced him as well. Also managed to get that car into the points. His teammate Jack, unfortunately, was unable to. Finished outside the points in what was a very entertaining race indeed. Bloxham's gone second, 1 minute 10.4. And quite a few 121s, so Rick with a really impressive lap out front. Super Gabu goes into third with a 111.7 at the moment. ASMD's gone back out on track in the Williams, having just slightly spun earlier on. And it's just brightening up a little bit, the rain disappearing, the water dissipating from the track. But also a bit of traffic at the moment as ASMD hits the curb and then hits the wall as a result. He was just trying to deal with some traffic, might have got caught up in a bit of dirty air and has ended up smashing that Williams into the barrier. And it's the second moment that ASMD's had so far in this session. Switch to Williams from Red Bull between round 7 and round 8. DRS is enabled. Evil Hunter is deploying it now as he comes in towards this final chicane. Just slightly more tentative than you would ordinarily be, given the conditions at the moment. Evil Hunter will be the 10th driver to set a lap in this session for a Racing Point team who claimed their first podium as the Racing Point team today in Monza. The 7th podium for the team overall, as Evil Hunter goes into 5th place with a 1 minute 11.0. ASMD is still making his way back in towards the pits. Here's Night Shadow in the Ferrari. Managed to get himself in the points after overtaking Liverpool fan in the closing stages of the Hungarian Grand Prix, as he manages to negotiate a slow-moving Mercedes, which I believe actually is Liverpool fan, I want to say. Yeah, Liverpool fan who's in P4. Got it with a 11.7. The lap times are going to start to plummet now as the track gets drier and drier. Purple middle sector for Night Shadow, as he brings the car in towards this beautiful banked final couple of corners. Flat out round the final turn, getting as close to the wall as you possibly dare, and now up to the line for the Ferrari, and it's P7 on a 1 minute 11.6. Warrior Huntsman then in the Haas. Wasn't with us in Hungary, is with us in the Netherlands, and what is he going to be able to do? The lap times, as I say, are going to start to fall quite dramatically now, and he goes up to P8 with a 1 minute 11.0, so still nobody getting anywhere near what Rick has done in the Renault. Laganis into second. He's in the Renault as well, having replaced Forza Ferrari, who is no longer joining us in the Admins Racing League, which is quite big actually, because he was second in the World Championship, just 5 points behind Desinio, who took the lead last time out. Night Shadow in the Ferrari closest to him. Here comes the leader, Desinio, and it's 5th place in the Ferrari with a 1 minute 10.8. Remember, all the drivers are trying to do right now is just avoid being in the bottom 5, or the bottom 4, as it is with the 19 drivers joining us this evening. El Girari in the Alfa Romeo will be the next one to come out and set a lap. And it is, interestingly, the four drivers will be eliminated, and it is 4 drivers who are yet to set a lap. ASMD, El Girari, Jay Hartnell and Jazzy, as El Girari bounces over the curb at the chicane, trying to find as much lap time as possible. And round the final corner he comes, as AS17 goes quickest, 1 minute 9.0 for him. Once again the lap time's falling. El Girari only able to do a 1 minute 12.7, 17th fastest for him. Here's Jay Hartnell in towards the final couple of turns for him. Finished in the top 10 in Hungary, did Jay Hartnell. An impressive performance, having been knocked out in Q2, and it's only 18th place, so he's in a bit of trouble here with 9 minutes to go. Needs a better lap to progress into the second qualifying session. And what about ASMD then, who has spun twice already in this session? But as the track dries out, this is going to be a chance now to show his true pace and try and bump himself further up the order. Unable to score points in the last race in Hungary. Didn't finish the Grand Prix. And hopefully for him, we'll be able to this time with a decent finish. ASMD now round the final corner will be the last driver to set a lap in this session. And up towards the line in the Williams, and it is 16th, so not quite enough at the moment as it stands to get up into the top 15 where he needs to be to qualify for Q2. Ribas up to 12th place now, 1 minute 11.5 for him, and with that most of the drivers are now back in the pits. And there's AS17 in in the Williams car, just bringing that back into the pits. 4/10 ahead of Rick at the top of the timing screens here in the first qualifying session. There's Jack in the Alfa Romeo has made contact with ASMD, who just seemed to be going very slowly indeed through the first sector, and as a result has been punted by the Alfa Romeo. That was a strange incident between those two. ASMD's been involved in quite the share of drama so far in this session. As I think he spins the car as well. Well, nearly does. Got very, very close indeed. In the seaside town of Zandvoort. It was Mayor Van Alphen who decided that a race in the Netherlands was going to be viable. It was initially actually just a street race before this track really, because Jay Hartnell smashes the marker boards on the way to the pits. Before this circuit was really conceived as a race circuit, it was actually a street track and a street race in 1939. Before, of course, the Second World War, and that's when eventually, afterwards, the Dutch Automobile Racing Club started looking at where they could build a racetrack. Of course, Assen gets used in MotoGP, but they chose Zandvoort in amongst the sand dunes, and so here we are in the Netherlands for the Dutch Grand Prix. And it's a good job in the seaside resort town that it is getting a little bit sunnier here in this qualifying session. Night Shadow then in 11th place in the Ferrari. Of course, don't pay too much attention right now to some of the front runners in the championship being a little bit further down the order. That would have been because some of the drivers will have set times as the track was drying. The end of Q1, I believe the track will be pretty much at its driest, and that's just going to allow the quicker runners to get back to what would be their normal grid position. Night Shadow at the moment is 9/10 of a second, or just under 9/10 of a second, ahead of where he needs to be. But of course, that cutoff is going to change quite drastically, as I say, as the track conditions change as this session progresses. So Night Shadow in P11. Warrior Huntsman behind him in 12th, not far behind, as you can see, just a thousandth of a second separating those two. Easy for me to say. Here's El Gerari needing a better lap in the Alfa Romeo, second last of the runners. Jay Hartnell doesn't need telling that he needs a better lap too, currently 5/10 behind El Gerari, his nearest rival on the timing screens. The first World Championship Dutch Grand Prix took place in 1952, and from then on it would remain a part of the F1 calendar for another 23 years before F1 would stop racing there, and of course it will return to Zandvoort next year. El Gerari goes up to 5th now, 1 minute 10.7. That's much more like it as far as he's concerned. Rick has left the session, so clearly feels as though he doesn't need to go any quicker, and well, he doesn't really. He's done a good enough lap in the Renault. Here's Decinio in the Ferrari, the new World Championship leader. On the podium last time in Hungary. With Ivo Hunter taking the win, having started on pole position as well. Decinio then in towards the final couple of corners. And he will bring that Ferrari... No, he will bring it across the line. Thought he was going to come into the pits. Crosses the line and goes 3rd. 1 minute 10.0 now from him. And that will definitely secure his safety and his passage into the second qualifying session. Warrior Huntsman, P13 right now in the Haas. Yeah, we'll need a little bit better, I would think. well, maybe not actually, 8 tenths ahead of P16, but he would certainly like to be even more comfortable than that, but he's going to bring that car into the pits anyway. And so it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's going to cost him anything anyway. But you never know. Once again, the track still drying. And the lap times therefore will still continue to get quicker. Jay Hartnell's on an outlap at the moment in the Red Bull. He needs to go quicker. So does Jack, ASMD and Shadow Moody. Shadow Moody is just a tenth of a second behind Super Gabu, so the AlphaTauri driver will know that he also needs a good lap. We're watching M Bloxham at the moment in the McLaren. He and Jazzy gave us some great entertainment in Hungary. Some good racing, but also a couple of errors in there from those two, which they'll be kicking themselves about. ASMD then would much prefer to get into the second qualifying session. Was out qualified by his teammate Jay Hartnell and outraced by him in Hungary. ASMD across the line now for his new team Williams, and what's this going to be? It's not an improvement. It's still a 1 minute 11.9 from him, which sees him languishing down in P17, and Jack has retired from the session, I believe. So yeah, the AlphaTauri is not going to have any further chance to progress into the second qualifying session, so he's out in the Q1 phase. Will Jay Hartnell be out, or will he be able to squeeze that Red Bull car into Q2? Well, he's backed out of this current lap, I can tell you that. Shadow Moody for Haas starts a lap, P16 for him at the moment, so it does look very much as though the bottom four, as you see it right now, are going to be the bottom four in Q1. Rebas on a lap as well at the moment, 6 tenths ahead of the cutoff, so I would think he's reasonably safe to progress out of Q1, but of course we'll be pushing for a slightly better lap time. And slightly held up, I think, by the AlphaTauri, which he won't be too grateful for, but brings it now towards the final sector of the track. And he's backed out of this lap as Rebas, so he's not going to be going any quicker. Now what about Shadow Moody into the final chicane, and he's being held up by the Mercedes, and they both spun and hit each other. I believe that was Rebas. Yes, it was. So, that's frustrating for Shadow Moody, and that's going to mean that he's not going to improve, and he won't get out of Q2. And, well, interestingly enough, Rebas was the driver he was right behind. He was the driver he needed to go quicker than to get into Q2, and Jay Hartnell's also got off in the Red Bull, which means he won't be improving. And so it's going to be him out of Q1, frustratingly, for Red Bull. And he's going to be joined by Jack in the AlphaTauri, ASMD in the Williams, and Shadow Moody in P16 at the very back of the grid for the 153-kilometre Grand Prix that awaits us. So the most wins here in the Netherlands from Jim Clark. 4 times did he take the win in Zandvoort. Ferrari are the most successful team in the history of the Dutch Grand Prix here. In the seaside town, 9 wins for them. Something tells me they'll not be taking victory next year for their 10th, but you never know. And incidentally, 9 is also the same number of wins from pole here in Zandvoort in the 28 races that we've had. So, yeah, qualifying important, perhaps, but maybe not as important as at some other tracks. There's actually more wins from second, which is 10. And 9 is a pretty popular number because there's also 9 wins from outside the top 2 in qualifying. Alberto Ascari it was who won the very first Grand Prix here in 1952. And 1985 was also a very familiar name in Formula One. Thanks to those of you who are watching. I'll let you guess in the comments, or maybe you already know, who won the last race in Zandvoort in 1985. The 28th and so far final race in Zandvoort. But of course, we very much look forward to F1 returning to this circuit next year. And we also await Q2 with Jay, Jack, ASMD and Moody all out of the first qualifying session. Jay, I just wonder what sort of response he's going to have to Ribas, who he made contact with on his final run, whether he was going to improve and potentially knock Ribas out of qualifying. And also some penalties in there as well for Shadow Moody, ASMD and Jack, which is going to mean that Jay will start this race provisionally in 16th position. Evil Hunters got in touch, hoping for back-to-back victories this evening. The win in the last race in Hungary put himself up to P13 in the Racing Point with that drive in what was a great performance in a really, really exciting Hungarian Grand Prix for round number 7. Hopefully round number 8 will give us a very similar level of enjoyment. Yes, whoever does end up being on pole will be hoping to just increase those numbers to 10 from 9 of wins from pole position. 19 wins from outside of pole certainly promises the prospect of a very exciting race, which you would normally get in online racing anyway, but when the statistics read that out, it's pretty good. Also quite intriguing because Zandvoort, as you might have noticed, it's a very high-speed circuit. There's not that many opportunities for overtaking apart from some slipstreaming down the home straight, of which there'll be plenty of opportunity to do. Rick then has gone out on the medium compound tyre, so looking for a strategical advantage going into the race. Which there will be a few drivers who will just choose to go on to the medium tyres. As mentioned, the tyres that you use in Q2 will be the tyres you start the race on in Q3, so you don't really want to make a mess of these tyres. You'll be doing a lot of laps on them. Rick then crosses the line to start a flying lap. His time will be the first on the board in this second qualifying session. And through the first sector and towards this very awkward left-hander. On the exit now through 5, 6 and 7 down towards the high-speed right-hander of turn 8. Brings it now down towards 9, gets on the grass slightly on the entrance, but doesn't affect him at all. In towards 10. Brings it through the left of 11. And opens up the DRS on the run down towards the chicane of turns 12 and 13. Difficult one to get right. Uses lots of curb on the first part. More cautious with it on the second part, just trying to reduce the amount of wheel spin that he gets on the exit. And now through the banked final corner. It's been a clean run this from the Renault, who without a couple of incidents in Hungary could have been in with a shout for the win or even the podium. 1 minute 9.9 for the Renault driver. Evil Hunter, winner of the last race, is going to come through. 1 minute 10.6 from Sadistic King in the Red Bull. Oh, very wide goes Evil Hunter, invalidates his lap time as a result, so he'll have to go again. Currently on the soft tyre. Warrior Huntsman's also had his lap time deleted. Ribas in towards the final couple of corners in the Mercedes, really loses the back end on the exit on the curb. Does well to hold that car together and up towards the line for him to go fourth and slowest of the four that have currently set a lap. 1 minute 12.0, 1 minute 11.4 from Super Gabu to move swiftly ahead of him. Bloxham in the McLarens had his lap deleted as well, so wasn't actually something we saw a lot of in the first qualifying session, but quite a few drivers now. It's got drier, the lap times are falling, being a little bit more audacious with the track limits, and it's catching a few drivers out. Jazzy's just coming out of the pits. That's not going to affect Desinio on his lap at the moment. Desinio looking for his third victory in ARL. Took 2 wins prior to round number 7 in Hungary. And before that, he was sharing the win tally with Forza Ferrari and Spicy Noodle Master. Once again, easy for me to say. But Evil Hunter's victory in Hungary gave us a 4th different winner in the first 7 races in the Admins Racing League. Desinio then in towards the final chicane. Purple middle sector for him. And again, the driver's just making sure not to use too much of the curb on the left-hander at turn 13 and towards the final 2 corners of 14 and 15. Very cleanly and smoothly through there in the red car. Opens up the DRS and out towards the line for Desinio, and it's third fastest, 1 minute 10.0. Very, very tight at the top. Laganis has leapfrogged his teammate Rick to go P1. Here's El Girard in the Alfa Romeo, managed to set a very respectable lap time at the end of Q1 to move out of the drop zone and into the second qualifying session. Can he repeat that form and get that car now into the top 10? Q2, we lose another 5 drivers. And of course, anyone that starts outside the top 10 is eligible to use whatever tyres they wish for the Grand Prix. So the rule that you use whatever tyres, or you start the race on whatever tyres you use in Q2, is only applicable to the drivers that actually make it through to Q3. Anyone that is unable to make it through the first 2 qualifying sessions is able to choose whatever tyres they want for the race. El Girard round the final corner opens up the DRS and across the line for him to go 6th, 1 minute 10.6 at the moment, which is 1.4 seconds ahead of the Mercedes of Rivas, who I think we'll know he can probably improve on that time. Now Big Ben in the Racing Point, loses the back end, does very well to hold it together, but that'll cost him his lap time. And the Alpha Tauri just getting out of the way for him, which I believe was Super Gabu. And yeah, I think he would have been fearing being punted by the out of control Racing Point, but Big Ben did very well to hold that car together. Ben, who looked as though he might have been in with a shout of scoring points in Hungary, but just got caught by the chasing pack towards the end of the Grand Prix, and unfortunately for him was pushed back out of the top 10. Here's Super Gabu then. One AlphaTauri out of qualifying already. His teammate Jack eliminated in Q1. Can Super Gabu get one AlphaTauri into the top 10? Of course, we've had an AlphaTauri win a Grand Prix today. 2 wins in the history of F1 for the AlphaTauri team, as Super Gabu runs very wide, and again, both of them coming up Monza with Pierre Gasly's win today. Gasly, also the first French driver to win a Formula 1 Grand Prix in 24 years since Olivier Panis in 1996. The last run of this, by the way, this race in 1985 was Niki Lauda. As through turn 13 comes Super Gabu, who loses the back end ever so slightly, has to scoop the car up on the exit, which will just cost him a little bit of time through the final couple of turns. As now he opens up the DRS. Liverpool fans got into 10th, and actually Super Gabu's backed out of his lap and come back into the pits. Here comes Night Shadow in the Ferrari. He'll be the Well, after he says that, there'll be 2 drivers left to set a lap. Evil Hunter and Warrior Huntsman, who both have their laps invalidated. Night Shadow only manages 11th place, so at the moment that'll be him in a bit of trouble in terms of making it out of this second qualifying session. A couple of tenths behind Liverpool Fan, who he had a pretty good battle with in Hungary last time out, so yeah, a better lap needed for the Ferrari driver towards the end of this session. Rebus currently in P13, was involved in that incident with the Haas in the last session in Q1, and well, you could say that's a factor in him getting through to Q2, but his lap time, in fairness, was very quick indeed. As he goes up to P11 now, displaces Night Shadow. So Night Shadow is, definitely going to be wondering where that time's gone for him. You would have expected him to be a surefire runner, really, for getting into the third qualifying session, but he's going to have some thinking to do as he brings that car back into the pits, and we'll need to figure out where he can gain the time that he's lost. Currently down in P12. Evil Hunter and this driver here, Warrior Huntsman, both of those still yet to set lap times. As round the final corner he comes in to start a lap. In the Haas car in towards turn 1 for him. And now through this tricky turn 4, does well on the exit. His teammate Shadow Moody knocked out as a result of that incident with Rebus towards the end of Q1. Are we going to have one Haas into Q3? It's a good run through the first sector. And a purple first sector as well being shown on the timing screens. In towards turn 10 he comes. Into the right hand and just lets it run on the exit. Now through to 11. And he'll open up the DRS on the exit. Does well to hold the back end together. On the run down towards the chicane of 12 and 13. Slightly wide of the first apex. That's going to compromise his run through the second part of the chicane, which will cost him a little bit of time. Also has to lose a bit of time in trying to hold the back end together. As now around the final couple of corners, the last sector probably hasn't been exactly what he wanted, but it's been a decent lap overall by the looks of it from Rory towards the line, but only P13 with a 1:11.2, which is half a second off what Liverpool Fan has done in P10. So the Mercedes occupying 10th position might just be doing enough. Super Gabu, interestingly, is out of the session, and so it looks as though we're going to have both AlphaTauris failing to make it into Q3 after Pierre Gasly's heroic win in the Italian Grand Prix earlier on this afternoon. Evil Hunter then on and out lap at the moment. Knows that he needs a good lap, sub 1:07, to make it into the third qualifying session. The pole sitter and the winner last time in the Hungarian Grand Prix. It'd be a shock if he went out. Of course, his first lap time got deleted because he ran wide. You'll need to watch those track limits on this run to be able to make it into the top 10 shootout to decide who'll take pole position. Will it be a second consecutive pole? I wonder. For Evil Hunter, as brings it into the exit of turn 4. And Big Ben has also retired from the session, so he's P7 in the Racing Point, and that's tough. He's only a 10th ahead of Liverpool Fan in 10th place, 2 tenths ahead of Rebus in the second Mercedes, who definitely would be able to find a little bit of time needed to get himself out of Q2 and into the next session, as Evil Hunter just gets past the slow-moving Ferrari. Out of turn 13 then in towards the final couple of corners of 14 and 15. AS17 has also retired from the session. We barely mentioned him, but Really good pace out front from the Williams driver. Here comes Evil Hunter. It's only P11 for the Racing Point. So, yeah, he's in real trouble of not making it out of the second qualifying session. And, in fact, he's going to bring that car to a slow pace. And that's going to be the Racing Point out of the session, out-qualified by Big Ben. And if there is to be a second consecutive victory in the ARL for Evil Hunter, it's going to have to come from outside the top 10. That's a real shock. Is there going to be another one? Because here comes Night Shadow, currently down in P12 and in the drop zone himself. And in dire need of a better lap time. Currently on a 1 minute 10.8. So, not too far off. Just a couple of tenths needed. Oh, but he's invalidated his lap time. And he will have time, if he gets on with it, to come round and set another one. But at the minute, he's not finding those 2 tenths to get out of Q2 and into Q3. And Liverpool fan looks as though he might just hold on and get himself into the final 10 in qualifying. El Gerari in the Alfa Romeo brings it in towards the chicane of 12 and 13 on the soft compound tyres. So we'll be starting the race on this set of tyres. As he mounts the curb in towards the final corner. El Gerari currently 9th on a 1 minute 10.6. Up towards the line now for the Alfa Romeo. Goes up to 6th place in a 1 minute 10.1. Pushes Bloxham down to 7th. And pushes Sadistic King into a little bit of a dilemma. But Night Shadow's brought his car into the pits. Here comes Rebas, the only driver left in the session who will have any hope whatsoever of displacing his teammate, Liverpool fan, and getting into Q3. Didn't look like a great exit out of, turn 13. And unfortunately for him, he's had to back out of his lap. And so Liverpool fan is just about going to hang on to 10th place. And will hang on to a slot in the third and final qualifying session. In what has been a very surprising race indeed. Night Shadow, who got a very respectable points finish in Hungary, qualifying down in 12th place. Evil Hunter only managing 11th, the race winner last time in Hungary, also knocked out. And Rebas down in P13 in the Mercedes. So a couple of surprises on the cards in the second qualifying session. The Haas of Warrior Huntsman, the Alpha Tauri of Super Gabu. The two drivers joining those two in heading out of qualifying. Which leaves us with our top 10. AS17 in the Williams, who looks imperious out front at the moment. Laganis second in the Renault ahead of Rick, his teammate. The only driver in the top 10 to set a lap on the medium tyres. So, again, that'll be an interesting little development over the course of the Grand Prix. Desinio 4th, the championship leader. Jazzy in 5th. El Gerari in 6th in the Alfa Romeo. Bloxham takes 7th place in Q2. Big Ben getting into Q3 and 8th in the Racing Point. A good effort from him. Sadistic King takes 9th. And a Liverpool fan, as I said, holding on to that Q3 spot. As Evil Hunter and Night Shadow failed to improve on their lap times and end up out in the Q2 phase. So, a bit of a surprise and a bit of a dramatic Q2 session, really, with a couple of drivers who you would certainly expect to be in the top 10 in qualifying knocked out before they can get to that stage, which is going to lead to, I think, an interesting race from those two coming from further down the grid. Also for Rebas in the Mercedes, who just about squeezed into the second qualifying session. So you could probably say did well to get up to P13. As mentioned, Shadow Moody might have some words to say about that after potentially being held up at the end of Q1. But who knows if he was going to improve. Only the AlphaTauri driver, or excuse me, the Haas driver will really know that. But there then is the finishing order in qualifying 2. Big Ben doing very well indeed to get up into the second qualifying session, but the surprises await us in the bottom 5. Evil Hunter only 11th, Night Shadow in 12th in the Ferrari, Rebus 13th, Warrior Huntsman 14th, and Super Gabu 15th, all eliminated in the second phase of qualifying. And a real surprise to see particularly Evil Hunter and Night Shadow not making it into Q3. It was Sammy Davis who was brought in as a consultant in the early 50s for building this racetrack and constructing it post World War II. And the result of the consultation, but then of course the actual laying down of the circuit, was a semi-purpose built track. Still partly a racetrack, and the track was also used quite a lot for testing in Formula 1 as well as F1 racing. Right, the top 10. Rick Dacinio, Liverpool fan. El Drari, Bloxham, Laganis, Big Ben, Sadistic King. AS17 and Jazzy joining us for this session. Rick Dacinio, AS17, you would imagine would be the favourites to progress from the session, or rather to progress on to pole position. But of course there can't be 3 drivers on pole, there will just be the one. But as I mentioned, it's actually the second place grid spot that tends to be the most favourable one here in Zandvoort. A reminder, 10 wins from second in the history of the Dutch Grand Prix, and 9 from pole, and also 9 from below second place. So it's really a bit of a mix-up in terms of which drivers will gain most from their grid slot. Of course, pole position probably gives you the best opportunity, but statistically here in Zandvoort, it actually doesn't necessarily give you the best advantage or the best odds for winning the race. Right, meanwhile, here comes AS17. Certainly one of the drivers who you would pick to be a favourite to get his car onto pole position. Be facing some stiff competition from Renault and Ferrari. 2 Renaults in the Q3 session, just the one Williams and just the one Ferrari as well. Both McLarens also joining us for Oh, and AS17 has got into the wall, and he had also set a purple. Well, it was the first sector, but had a massive spin on the exit curve. It's so easy to do through these high-speed corners. Breaking traction, turning at high speed is what's catching quite a few drivers out in qualifying. Was of course catching a few drivers out in the wet conditions, but it's also doing so in the dry. So Rick in the Renault can capitalise on that error and potentially put his car on provisional pole. But of course there will be another run in which AS17 can recover from that mistake and try and get his car up on the pole. 1 minute 9.5 from Dacinio was the first lap of the session here in Q3. Will it be beaten by Rick? Or will Rick have to slot into second place behind him? El Drari with a 1 minute 10.3. Here comes the runner of Rick, goes fastest, 1 minute 9.1, 4/10 clear of Dacinio. Here comes Bloxham now in the McLaren. Very consistent pace for him, as now the shortest run towards the line. 3rd place, ahead of El Drari, and up to 3rd for him with a 1 minute 10.2. Here comes Laganis now in the 2nd Renault. Was right up there in the conversation for pole position in the Hungarian Grand Prix in round 7 last time out. Big Ben with a 1 minute 10.8 to go 5th, and currently last of the runners that have set a lap thus far in Q3. Here comes Laganis now towards the line in the Renault, and he goes 3rd, slots in behind Decenio and some 6/10 off his teammate Rick. So it's a really good lap from the Renault driver, as we await Liverpool fan and Sadistic King to start their laps. AS17 has now come back out on the track, having changed his front wing. Jazzy still in the pits in the McLaren. His teammate Bloxham up into 4th place with his qualifying effort thus far. Liverpool fan then round the final corner in the Mercedes. Just the one Mercedes in Q3 as well, after Rebas was knocked out in the second part of qualifying. What can Liverpool fan do? Scraped into Q3, having got himself into P10. Was holding on for dear life at the end of the session to that spot, but here he is in the top 10 shootout. And now through this high-speed first sector. Slight braking for turn 8 in towards the right-hander of 9. Down the hill into the braking zone of 10. Comes the Mercedes. Pretty good exit, nice and tidy. And on the exit of 11 opens up the DRS rear wing. The flap that just gives you a little bit more straight line speed, as runs a little bit wide of the apex to turn 12. Hasn't cost him all that much time, but has to just wait for the front end to come round. Through turn 13, now through the final couple of corners. A Liverpool fan here. We're going to see what sort of lap time he can do. 1 minute 9.1 is the time to beat. 4th place, 1 minute 10.2 for the Mercedes driver. Sends Bloxham down to P5 in the McLaren. Here comes Sadistic King now in the Red Bull. His teammate Jay Hartnell already knocked out of qualifying in the very first part of qualifying. Sadistic King up towards the line in the Red Bull. 7th place, 1 minute 10.6, moves ahead of Big Ben. Now here comes AS17. Round the final couple of corners for him. He's made it round the lap this time. And once again, we'll take the shortest run to the line. And the Williams driver goes P4. Only a 1 minute 9.7 for him. So having been a really, really quick participant in the first 2 qualifying sessions, he's only able to manage 4th place thus far in Q3. Jazzy still in the pits for McLaren. And AS17 6/10 away from pole position. Rick currently on provisional pole by 4/10 from Decenio, as the Renault driver looks to take pole position and become the second driver in as many races to stick the car in the front row. Of course, Evo Hunter will not be on pole because he was knocked out in the second part of qualifying. Which was a real shock for the pole sitter and the winner of the last Grand Prix. But so far, it's Rick who leads in this final part of qualifying on provisional pole right now from Decenio. Lagani's is 3rd in the second Renault. AS17 currently 4th for Williams. Liverpool fan in 5th. Bloxham 6th in the McLaren. And El Gerari occupying 7th place in the Alfa Romeo. Sadistic King is 8th. Big Ben last of the drivers who have thus far set a lap. And Jazzy in the second McLaren hasn't set a lap yet and is therefore down in P10. Bloxham now that in towards these final couple of corners for a McLaren team that currently sit 5th in the Constructors' Championship on 39 points. 55 behind the leaders Ferrari. As in towards the first corner then comes Bloxham. Brings it into the exit now through turns 2 and 3. And then in towards that very tricky left-hander of 4. Out of which there are a couple of variations of exits that you can take. And down the hill now towards turn 8, a nice run, nice and tidy through there for the McLaren driver. In towards the right-hander of 10. It's a good exit, a good flowing run for the McLaren man as he brings it onto the exit, and the DRS line comes at you pretty fast, actually, as you exit turn 11, now down towards this final chicane. Clips the first apex. Is cautious with the second, and then runs wide and invalidates the lap times. That's so frustrating right at the end of the lap. Has his lap time deleted for an infringement of track limits. Here comes Desinio then in the Ferrari, and he's backed out of his current lap and will go again as he comes back round to try and take pole position. Here's Big Ben in the Racing Point, currently 9th, just a 10th behind Sadistic King in the Red Bull, so knows there's probably more scope to improve on his current lap time and push himself up towards, well, probably so he can get up towards the top 6 in that car. Big Ben across the line, P8, 1 minute 10.4, pushes Sadistic King down a position. And here's AS17 in the Williams, who has also backed out of that lap. And we'll come back round. Desinio's come into the pits, so it doesn't look as though Desinio's going to be setting a lap time in the final run of qualifying. Here comes Rick, looking to extend his advantage at the top of the leaderboard. He's got the Williams, though, of AS17 in front of him, who just about gets out of the way. Whether that costs Rick any time, I'm not entirely sure. We'll wait to find out as he comes towards the final few corners of the lap. In towards the final chicane for the Renault driver. It's a really nice, smooth run. Now on the exit, in towards this high-speed final couple of corners. Round the banked curve, spins and smashes into the barrier. Just took too much onto the exit curb. And first of all, invalidated the lap. And then second of all, binned it in the barrier. Will that leave AS17 the path to pole position? Well, just under 6/10 away from it at the moment in the Williams, so certainly needs a much better lap here. Spun on the first lap of qualifying and has actually damaged his front wing somewhere, so I think that happened on the out lap. He's still going to try and improve on his lap time, but with a knocked off front wing, I think that's going to be quite difficult from here for the Williams driver, which will mean that Rick, despite that crash at the end of qualifying, might just be able to hang on. But his teammate Laganis in third place, also on a lap. There he is. He's got a fully intact front wing on that car, and it's a very good run as well through the first sector. Through turn 11 now. And the left-hander opens up the rear wing. And now brings that car down towards this final chicane. A purple middle sector being shown on the timing screens for the Renault driver. Rick has retired from the session. Laganis now in towards these final couple of corners. Is this going to be a pole position run for the driver who raced for Williams last time in Hungary? Jazzy goes up to second in the McLaren. Brilliant lap from him. Here comes Laganis. P2 for him. Can't quite take pole position. A couple of tenths away from Rick, his teammate in the Renault. And that is going to be pole position for Rick in the Renault car. Jazzy with a spectacular effort right at the end. Took second place and looks set to take a spot on the front row of the grid. But it was taken off it by that man Laganis. But he was unable to take pole position away from the other Renault. And the second pole sitter in as many races is the Renault of Rick. It's Laganis, his teammate, completing a Renault front row lockout for the Dutch Grand Prix. Jazzy in third in the McLaren after a great effort. Desinio fourth in the Ferrari. AS17 only fifth Williams. A Sadistic King in sixth in the Red Bull. Liverpool fan finishing in seventh, or qualifying in seventh. Bloxham down in eighth in the second McLaren. El Jarrari in ninth. And Big Ben last of the Q3 runners. And he'll start the Grand Prix from 10th position. Renault, of course, who were announced today to be changing to the Alpine F1 team for the 2021 season. And it is, as you can see, pouring rain for the Grand Prix, and that's going to be very intriguing indeed. We saw just how difficult it was for the drivers to contend with the conditions in Hungary, and it's going to be the same here in the Netherlands as well. As we wait for all of the drivers to join the session for this Grand Prix. Renault, of course, we haven't won a race since returning to Formula 1 in 2016. Are they about to do so here? The Dutch Grand Prix. Number 8 is underway. It's going to be a tentative start indeed from Rick on the run down towards turn 1. And he managed to hold the lead from his team. Laganese, the senior Ferrari. Aaron of Jazzy. Jazzy manages to hold on to P3. Desinio up to 4th. AS has lost out to Desinio. Wider goes El Jarari. Romeo here blocks it. Has gone to P9. McLaren Evo Hunter manages to get up one position up to P, but it's Rick after a very good start indeed that leads the drive on the opening lap. Virtual safety car deployed because AS17 is out of the Grand Prix in the Williams. Oh, and he's made contact there with the Red Bull, the Sadistic King, so those two have crashed, and as a result they're both out of the Grand Prix, and AS17, who in the early parts of qualifying looked like one of the favourites to be challenging for the victory in this race, is out of it, as is Sadistic King. Both drivers making it into Q3. Neither driver will make it to the end of this Grand Prix. It's a really devastating result for those two. And, well, that's one contender you would have thought for the race win, who have left us. Oh, and Rick really having to fight the back end as he comes round now to start. Oh, and into the wall has gone Laganis. Laganis has hit the barrier on the exit of the final corner. He's had to come into the pits as a result. Just lost the back end on the curbs. Quite a few drivers coming into the pits now. Either for new front wings or potentially even for intermediate tyres. We'll see. Rick has stayed out though. Desinio, as a result of all this, has got up to second place. Jazzy into third in the McLaren. Night Shadow, who started down in 12th place, is now Evil Hunter for 5th. So those two have got really good starts, as Warrior Huntsman behind them really fights the back end. And it is more sets of wet tyres for the drivers who have just come in. ASMD is one of them. Bloxham has also come in. Big Ben as well. So those drivers, I think, then will have been involved in a bit of contact in the early going of the race. We rejoin Rick. His teammate has, unfortunately for him, hit the wall on the virtual safety car restart, and got into the pits and potentially cost himself a chance of a point scoring finish. Rick really fighting the back end, and you can see how close Desinio is into the final couple of corners, and they're both trying to just avoid the exit curb, which has caused them dry, let alone the wet. Desinio the first corner. No DRS, of course, in the wet conditions. Desinio with the fastest lap as well, 1 minute 24.4, as he looks to chase after Rick and take the lead of the Dutch Grand Prix. Evil Hunter just behind El Jarari. Then Super Gabu challenging Warrior Huntsman. The AlphaTauri chasing the Haas, who goes slightly wide on the exit. Liverpool fan has come into the pits now in the Mercedes, and a change of front wing as well for that car, which is the reason he's come into the pits. Desinio chasing the Renault of Rick through the first sector. Jay Hartnell picks up a 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits. Desinio set a purple first sector. Warrior Huntsman's out of the session in the Haas car. There's Bloxham, and Lagani's ahead of him. Safety car deployed. Safety car has been deployed. And where's Warrior Huntsman? I wonder. Laganes, there he is. So the Haas driver has spun the car into the wall. That's going to be terminal damage for him, and as a result the safety car is deployed. And I wonder, are Rick and Desinio going to really see the point of coming into the pits for a fresh set of rubber? It'll just be another set of wet tyres, which I don't think will be entirely necessary, because of course the wets will last quite a long time in this race, but we'll see. No, they do stay out. Desinio just behind. So a dramatic start. 3 retirees already from this Dutch Grand Prix. AS17, Sadistic King, crashing into each other on the first lap of the Grand Prix, and Warrior Huntsman losing it all by himself into the wall in the Haas, which has brought out a safety car, a virtual safety car on lap 1, a full safety car on lap 4. Rick still leading the pack. Desinio still in second place. His pursuit of P1 will have to just be halted for now, as he's got to stick behind him. And Jazzy, who at the end of Q3 pulled a brilliant lap out to get himself up to third place, is third place behind those two. The Renault F1 team and Renault Power as a whole, they've all combined taken 168 victories, with of course Renault, Benetton, Lotus, Red Bull to name a few. Not quite McLaren. Carlos Sainz unable to steal the victory from Pierre Gasly today. Of course, it would have been McLaren's first victory in nearly 8 years. Jenson Button's win in Brazil 2012, the last time McLaren were on the top step of the podium. Will they be again with Jazzy? Well, we mentioned 9 wins from outside the front row. Could be a 10th with the McLaren of Jazzy this evening, as the safety car brings us round on towards the 5th lap of the race. And you can see how Rick is almost passing the safety car. One complaint on the F1 game is how slow the safety car can be at times, and how it's difficult to warm up the tyres. You just need to listen to Lewis Hamilton's team radio actually to know all about that in real life, as well as just on the game. But after that frantic start then, let's just run you through the order. Rick still leads the Grand Prix. Desinio up to second after all that madness. Jazzy is in third. Evil Hunter and Night Shadow having started 11th and 12th and out to 4th and 5th, and potentially right back in the hunt now for a race win, having been knocked out of Q2. El Girari currently 6th. Jack in 7th in the Alpha Tauri. He was knocked out in Q1. Rivas in 8th, up from 13th position. Laganes down in 9th after his contact with the barrier on the virtual safety car restart. And Super Gabu at the moment is rounding out the top 10 on lap 5 of this Dutch Grand Prix. Just wonder how long the safety car will be with us, as we still wait for Shadow Moody and the Haas to just catch the back of the pack. Also actually waiting for Jay and Big Ben to catch up, but there's Jay. Big Ben will be not too far behind in the racing point. There he is, and before too long he'll be coming up to the top 14 in front of him. Shadow Moody, though, has a little bit more ground to make up in the Haas, but hopefully he'll get there eventually before the safety car comes back into the pits. And then, of course, we've got to get going again, as the safety car will bring us round at least one more time. And into the pits comes Jazzy. No, I think he was thinking about it, but he decides to stay out. Rick, who was coming under a bit of an onslaught from Desinio behind him just before the safety car was brought in, and Jay Hartnell has been handed another penalty, this time for a collision with ASMD, and it's all getting a little bit bunched up behind the leaders. J&S&D running down in 13th and 14th at the moment. And everyone's caught up now, apart from Shadow Mooney, but he's getting closer. He's catching up to the pack, and I think he'll be there. Yeah, he will be there. He'll easily catch up to that lot by the end of the lap as he brings himself ever closer. Renault may not be taking a 1-2 in this race this evening. Laganes, I should say. Having to pit for repairs after losing the back end on the exit of the final corner following the virtual safety car, and that's left us with a Renault, a Ferrari and a McLaren as our top three. Rick then. Come to the final couple of corners again. The safety car in at the end of the lap, and Rick will look to get the restart he needs to pull away from Desenio. He's not really timed it all that well, has he? Desenio's going to be right on him. Jazzy's going to be running the pair of them, and down towards turn one they got the safety car restart, and no one able to gain position just yet. So in the end, Rick just about timed it well enough in the Renault, and Rebus has gone down to the back of the pack, and Jay Hartnell has gone with him. So Rebus and Jay both making contact with each other. Jay actually reversing back down the track to try and come back into the pits, but those two already involved in a fair bit of drama on the safety car restart. Rick still leads, Desenio in second, Jazzy in third behind him, Evil Hunter fourth ahead of Night Shadow, then El Gerari in the Alfa Romeo, followed still by Jack. Super Gabu has got himself ahead of Bloxham in ninth position. Bloxham rounding out the points paying positions at the moment as we look down through the rain. Desenio looking to catch up with the Renault. There's Jazzy behind, coming under a little bit of pressure from Evil Hunter, who wants to clear that McLaren as quickly as possible to avoid being passed by Night Shadow, but it's very, very close between those drivers behind. It's pretty close between these two as well out front. Desenio follows Rick around the final corner. Oh, and Rick loses it and goes into the wall. And it's both Renaults who have lost it at the final corner, and Rick nearly being collected by the pack. It's happened to not one, but two Renaults, and it's exactly the same as what happened in Hungary. It was Forza Ferrari and Rick who both lost it in Hungary in the wet. They both paid the price for it. And now it's Rick and Laganes who have both made mistakes for Renault here. And Evil Hunter gets ahead, or stays ahead I should say, of Night Shadow. Very, very close between those two in Evil Hunter's pursuit of Jazzy, who is now to second place. Desenio, as a result of that, takes the lead of this Grand Prix. Both Renaults having drama. El Gerari in the Alfa Romeo has got front wing damage, so he's lost his front wing somewhere, and that's going to cost him a lot of time now to Jack behind him in the AlphaTauri. He's under a lot of pressure from Laganes, who started in second place in this Dutch Grand Prix. And now down towards the chicane. The AlphaTauri still just in front of the Renault. And a Renault with 34 wins in Formula 1. If it were to be a 35th, it would need to be one hell of an effort from this point, as now Evil Hunter looks to get past Jazzy and gets the job done towards turn one. Second place now for the Racing Point driver, Night Shadow. If he has any designs on getting ahead of the Racing Point, wants to get ahead of this McLaren as quickly as possible. It's through the first three corners now in towards four. Just behind them is El Girari, who is still going on a damaged front wings. This is an impressive effort indeed from the Alfa Romeo driver. Really doesn't feel like the damage is such that he has to bring his car into the pits just yet. So he's doing well actually to stay on the back of Night Shadow. And can the Ferrari take this podium position away from the McLaren? Of course, just 9 laps into this race. That's a massive moment of oversteer on the exit for Jazzy, who is under so much pressure now from Night Shadow as the exit turn 11 now down the straight towards the chicane of 12 and 13. And if Night Shadow can set himself up nicely through these final few corners, he'll have a shot of getting ahead of the McLaren on the run down towards turn 1. Jazzy gets a 3-second time penalty meanwhile for exceeding track limits. That's not going to do his campaign for a podium any good. Night Shadow's all over him now through the final couple of corners, and surely he's going to have the run and the slipstream and the chance to pass him down towards the down towards turn 1. Jack in the Alfa Romeo's had some Alpha Tauri, I should say, has had some drama. He's spun off somewhere, and as a result, Shadow Moody's going to get ahead of him. I don't know if Jack's lost any front wing, but he's coming into the pits. That allows Shadow Moody to get up into P11 now. And interestingly, Night Shadow wasn't able to get ahead of Jazzy, who is clearly carrying enough straight line speed in that McLaren to negate the run that Night Shadow was getting through the final sector. Eldro is just starting to fall away from these two now ever so slightly. A little bit wide goes the McLaren. Evil Hunter just over 5 seconds now behind the race leader Decenio, who looks to pull away, having taken the lead after Rick's mistake. Jazzy still fending off the Ferrari behind him and spinning. Oh, and that's resulted in contact between him and the Ferrari. Oh, Night Shadow's going to be livid about that. He manages to hold on to his front wing. It's cost him a lot of time though. Elgeroy's got ahead of both of them with a damaged front wing on the Alfa Romeo. Oh, Jazzy with a horrid mistake, spinning the car, and actually I think it's Jazzy that's lost some front wing as a result of that. So his mistake sending him into the Ferrari and sending him out of a shot of the podium places. He's now just ahead of Laganes in the Renault. He carries on actually, does the McLaren driver. Night Shadow won't be complaining all that much about that one, with an opportunity now to try and catch up to Evil Hunter. And Liverpool fan has just spun. He's made a mistake, so that's put him down to 10th place behind Big Ben. So quite a few spinners in the early going of this Dutch Grand Prix. Laganes now follows Jazzy on the exit of turn 4. As behind Bloxham gets ahead of Super Gabu, who I think it's just run wide because he's only just overtaken him. He's getting a lot of ground already. Wide again goes Jazzy with a loss of downforce now in that McLaren. Yellow flags in sector 2. I'm not entirely sure why. Might be some debris potentially, but that's gone away again, that yellow flag. Lagan is in the slipstream now of Jazzy, barely able to see with all the spray that's coming at him from that car in front. Again, Jazzy fighting to keep that McLaren on the road. It's proving pretty tough. Oh, now it goes wide, and that allows Laganes to go through and past it. Meanwhile, Big Ben in the racing point is right behind Super Gabu in the Alpha Tauri, who's all over the place on the exit of the final corner. Jazzy has now come into the pits, and he's retired from the session, so clearly doesn't feel as though he's able to make up any ground after that front wing damage in the McLaren, and as a result of that, he's heading out of this Grand Prix. Promotes Bloxham to P6, Super Gabu and Big Ben, which the two you're watching now, up to 7th and 8th respectively, with Big Ben all over the back of the Alpha Tauri, whose mistake allowed Bloxham to go through just earlier. And Big Ben now potentially can get himself up into 7th place and within a chance of 6 points in this Dutch Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Rick, as a result of Jazzy's retirement, has got himself up into the points paying positions. He's right behind the Haas of Shadow Moody, who was down in P16 in qualifying. That's a really good move, daring as you like from the Renault. Had to rely on Shadow Moody seeing him and giving him space. That could have gone wrong, but it's a really good overtake from Rick. Audacious move, and it pays off, and he's up now to P9. And with 10 seconds up to Big Ben, he can try and set after some more positions in this Grand Prix. Designo's continuing to extend his lead out front. 6 seconds now between him and Evil Hunter. So that gap increasing slightly between those two, as Designo looks to extend his championship advantage. And now in towards turn 4 we go. Big Ben has just fallen a second behind Super Gabu. Rebus, meanwhile, is just behind the Williams of ASMD for 13th place, and the Williams driver really struggling on the exit of turn 11. Rebus following him. Those two both now outside the points, having been running in the top 10 after the drama that we saw in the opening few laps, but both of them now, and ASMD's actually lost some front wing, so that's the reason that he's struggling for pace and struggling to keep the car on the road, is because he's chipped off a bit of the end plate on that Williams car. Decides to continue though. Interestingly enough, it looked as though there was quite a bit missing on the front of that Williams, has to be said. Big Ben has got himself back to within a second now of the AlphaTauri of Super Gabu. Rick continuing to chase these two hard. They've both just lapped the Red Bull of Jay, who, as you can see, is now 3 minutes behind. And yeah, a long way, unfortunately for him, from a point-scoring finish. And he brings that Red Bull into the pits. He had actually gotten, as you can see, for the intermediate tyres, but it's a gamble that simply didn't pay off, and actually he's decided now to retire that car. So sadly for him, he's had quite enough of this Grand Prix. Big Ben getting incrementally closer now to Super Gabu in this battle for 7th. And I think he'll be slightly aware that there is a charging Renault coming up to it. Rick gets himself now to just over 6 seconds behind Big Ben. Laganis, meanwhile, has just about caught El Jarari in the Alfa Romeo as they bring the cars through the final couple of corners. This is where Laganis lost it earlier after the virtual safety car. Through there as he follows El Jarari through, just falls back to a second. Big Ben once again following Super the corner. Super Gabu just going offline, trying to avoid the slipstream. Big Ben didn't really look as though he had any interest in turning up the slipstream, has to be said. Avoid all the spray that will be coming from that AlphaTauri in front of it, and has to settle for P8 still in Grand Prix. Shadow Moody comes into the pits now for Haas, and running down in 10th place as he comes in. They're going to wait to serve a penalty as the 5 seconds are up, and it's, I believe, still a set of wets on that car. Yeah, still a set of wet compound tyres on that Haas as he goes away. Front wing change as well, which puts to P11. It won't put him below a Liverpool fan because he's actually at the moment. Rick continues to chase after Big Ben and Super Gabu. Laganis continues to chase after El Jarari, and he's closer than ever now round the final couple of turns, and if he can keep it all together now through turn 15, he'll have a shot at getting past the Alfa Romeo, the run down towards turn 1. He's got a really good run. Slipstream now on the car in front. Is this going to be P4 for him? Down the inside through turn 1. El Jarari might try to cut back underneath, but Laganis has the position covered off, and it's 4th place now in the Dutch Grand Prix for the Renault driver. Can he converge now on the podium positions as we saw in Hungary? An identical situation. We're seeing both the Renault cars have to recover from mistakes that they've made already in the early phases of the race. Just can't seem at the moment in these last couple of Grand Prix to get a race where they're both consistently running out front. 2 mistakes in Hungary, forcing them to have to try and come back. And now 2 mistakes in the early going here in forcing them. Oh, a Liverpool fan has retired from the race in the Mercedes, and virtual safety car is deployed as a result. So that's a nightmare, has to be said, for Liverpool fan in the Mercedes, who, well, he was running in the points momentarily, but ended up back down the order after a couple of mistakes from himself early on in the race, and looks as though he's now put that car in the wall and is out of the Dutch Grand Prix. So, well, 6 retirements now. Race and Evil Hunter does not, and Evil Hunter's going to have to wait 5 seconds for a penalty, which will be frustrating for him. Still on the wet tyres, so nobody taking the gamble for the Inters just yet. It doesn't really look dry enough for it, does it really? Night Shadow, though, has gone for the Inters, so that's a gamble from the Ferrari. We saw Jay Hartnell go for that gamble, and he was really struggling for pace before he decided to retire his Red Bull. And he's come out of the pits just as the virtual safety car ends, and he'll rejoin just behind Big Ben. So, well, he didn't really want to be in traffic, Night Shadow, has to be said, but he's stuck behind this battle now between the Racing Point and the AlphaTauri for 7th position in this Dutch Grand Prix. But this is going to be intriguing now. Are those intermediate tyres going to do the business for Night Shadow? Or has he just chosen the wrong time? Has he got the tyres just too early on in this Dutch Grand Prix? Remains to be seen, but he's losing so much time already to Super Gabu. Big Ben's ended up behind him. I think he made a mistake somewhere whilst I was babbling on about the intermediate tyres. So, yeah, Big Ben has fallen behind Night Shadow, but you can see how much he's catching up to the Ferrari already. And that car will be just skating at the moment around the track. Doesn't look as though it's quite dry enough yet for those tyres, but we'll see. The proof is going to be in the lap time for Night Shadow, and it could be that that's the best move of the Grand Prix. Exactly halfway through this race now. Evil Hunter's got another penalty for multiple warnings, but you can just see how much Night Shadow's struggling on that set of intermediates. I don't think it was the right choice. Big Ben in the Racing Point's going to be all over him now round the final corner. Night Shadow's made that decision. He just has to stick with it now and just try and make those tyres work, and hope and pray that it's going to start to get a little bit drier out on track. Otherwise, those intermediate tyres will not be taking him very far at all. There's a yellow flag in Sector 1, which means Big Ben, as much as he wants to, is unable to overtake the Ferrari, but those yellow flags have gone back in again, which means the Racing Point is free to attack the Ferrari again. And very wide goes the Mercedes of Ribas, just letting them through. Actually, Ribas is a lap down, so just slowing to let these two pass him. Night Shadow running a little bit wide again, and the Big Ben, though, not quite presented with an opportunity just yet, although now he is, because Night Shadow's gone very wide this time, and they're side by side. Big Ben's around the outside. Nothing Night Shadow could do about that. Just hasn't got the grip on the Inters. It's too wet for them. He's on the wrong tyre, unfortunately for him. Big Ben now back up into 5th place in the Racing Point. Laganes is still going on that set of wet compound tyre. Evil Hunter and Night Shadow, of course, he pitted under the virtual safety car. That's given Laganes 2nd place in this Dutch Grand Prix. Now 21 seconds is the lead that Decenio has out front on lap 19 of 36 in this Dutch Grand Prix. Ferrari, one of a quite incredible 14 different constructors. Given that there's been 28 races, 14 different constructors winning the Dutch Grand Prix is a pretty high number. Ferrari, as I mentioned, are one. Mercedes are another. Got the likes of McLaren, Williams, Renault, Lotus are in there as well. And some less familiar names. Hesketh won with James Hunt in Hunt's championship winning season in 1976. BRM, Cooper Climax won. Tyrrell actually less familiar, or rather more familiar than the names I've just mentioned. They've also won. And Cooper Climax, another Van Wall with Sterling Moss, also a winner at the Dutch Grand Prix. Van Wall, of course, one of the less known names in F1. Right, this is an interesting battle, isn't it? Bloxham just behind Night Shadow, really struggling now on those intermediate tyres, and right behind Bloxham is the Alfa Romeo of El Gerari, and there's just nothing Night Shadow could do about this. He's struggling for pace. He's, as I said, just not on the right tyre for the conditions. It was a gamble that I suppose might have been worth taking to try and propel himself up towards the podium places, but it's a gamble that simply hasn't worked. Here comes Bloxham now in the McLaren. He's got the run down towards turn 1. Is he going to have the momentum to go down the inside? Night Shadow has got to give him space. Bloxham gets a little bit caught up on the curb. Now runs wide. Eldro's got the chance to get side by side with him. Rick's in this battle as well in the Renault. Also gets ahead of Bloxham. And Bloxham, in trying to gain one position, has lost 2 to El Gerari and Rick, and gone down to 9th place in the race. He was just trying to send that McLaren down the inside of the Ferrari, but got caught up on the curb. That spat him out wide on the exit. And El Gerari now has got a great chance. He's side by side with the Ferrari, but Night Shadow stays ahead for the time being. Rick now, as a result, has been able to catch right up to these two and is on their tail as El Gerari follows Night Shadow through turn 11. Oh, Night Shadow's going to spin, and Rick's going to be forced out wide by El Gerari, and Bloxham, as a result, is going to get both those positions back. That's incredible. Bloxham, who lost 2 places in trying to gain one earlier on, is now back ahead of all of them after that spin for Night Shadow. And El Gerari, in trying to avoid the spinning Ferrari, pushed Rick out wide, and Bloxham gets all those positions back again. Brilliant stuff from the McLaren, opportunistic as you like. Night Shadow will it now on those enters. No, he stays out again. That's a little bit surprising. Here's El Gerari. Oh, and Rick's down the inside of both of them, and it's 3 wide on the exit of turn 1. Rick manages to get ahead. Bloxham now has been passed by El Gerari. Well, he lost 2 positions. He then gained them back, and now he's lost them both again. That's Bloxham, with Rick and El Gerari both getting ahead of him now. That's probably been the most polarising lap of Bloxham's league racing career. He'd lost the places, and then it was joy when he got them back again, but now they've both got ahead of him through turn 1. Rick then eventually manages to get ahead of all of them in that group and is up to P6, and is still trying to set off after Big Ben. 6 seconds behind him. Big Ben is now 3.5 behind Super Gabu in the AlphaTauri. Bloxham isn't going to leave El Gerari alone just yet, though. Chasing him through the first sector, and meanwhile there's Rebus, and there was just somebody going slowly in sector 2. ASMD has lost his front wing, meanwhile, once again in the Williams. Whether that's the same incident, actually, I'm not too sure. But anyway, Super Gabu into the pits for AlphaTauri, and is another set of wets on the car for him. Night Shadow thus far, the only driver to take the gamble to go on to intermediates, and well, it's really not paying off for him. He's gone slightly wide on the exit of turn 1, although he's side by side with Gabu. He gets ahead of Gabu through turn 3. How long is it though before Gabu regains that position? As Night Shadow again just loses the back end. Tries to keep it all together. Gabu, I think, will be expecting to get ahead of the Ferrari pretty quickly on what is the superior set of tyres for the current conditions. Night Shadow's still going. He's still giving it his all at the moment. There's Rivas again down in 12th place at the moment in the Mercedes. El Gerari is now just over a second ahead of Bloxham. Super Gabu's got a good run now on the Ferrari of Night Shadow, who just has no grip on the entry, no grip on the exit. It's really a struggle for him right now to try and keep that Ferrari on the track. Yellow flags momentarily in Sector 1. Super Gabu now is going to have exit. Yellow flags now in Sector 3. Oh, that's very sketchy for the Renault of Night Shadow. We just lost the back end around the final corner. Super Gabu, as a result, is down the inside into turn 1. Night Shadow will try to fight it. There's not really much point in doing that. And, yeah, has to settle in behind the Alfa Romeo. Bloxham comes into the pits now for McLaren. And once again, the mechanics, I think they're changing the front wing, actually. And he's out the set of the wet compound tyre with 13 laps left to go in this Dutch Grand Prix. And with that, not all that many close battles happening out on track at the moment. Rick is continuing to catch up to Big Ben. There he is in the Renault, closing that advantage that Big Ben has over him. Big Ben now is 20 seconds behind his teammate. And so there is Ben. And Rick is now just 1.5 behind him. So the Renault very much getting closer to the racing point. He comes into the pits. Big Ben is going to have a fresh set of tyres on the car, and he's gone too quickly into the pit lane. Picked up another 5-second penalty. So on go another set of wet tyres, and away he goes. Those 5 seconds will be added on at the end of this Dutch Grand Prix. Frustratingly for Big Ben. And that gives Rick now a 22-second gap to try and make up. And a safety car deployed. Safety car's been deployed for some reason. Not actually too sure why. It doesn't look as though anybody's gone off, but might be for debris on the track. ASMD has retired from the session now in the Williams. So it's a race that just has not gone his way in the slightest, unfortunately. Dacinio's come into the pits now for Ferrari. And he's still just about going to be ahead of Laganis when he exits. Laganis is, well, he's on 21 lap old wet tyres, and he's going to get rid of those now and go on to another set of wets to take him to the end of the Grand Prix. This will provide Night Shadow, surely, with a chance to pit and get rid of those intermediate tyres. However, he's got quite a long way to go. Just coming through turn 11 now. And that's a long way to get round to the pits. Currently in 8th place, so still holding on to a points-paying position at the moment is Night Shadow in the Ferrari. Took the gamble to try and go on to the intermediates, and it's a gamble, as I said, that simply hasn't worked out for him. Evil Hunter has pitted as well for Racing Point, and a fresh set of wets on his car as well. This will be of slight frustration for Dacinio, who was building a really healthy advantage out front before that safety car was deployed. Of course, this is going to bunch the pack up. El Gerari's coming to the pits. Night Shadow has now made it round, and he's going to go on to the blue-walled wet compound tyre. Not before, though. He serves a time penalty. And on go the new set of tyres, and away he goes. Into the pits as well has come Jack in the Alpha Tauri. And it's a new front wing on the car for him. And he's away as well in 10th place, and he will be ahead of Shadow Mooney, who is some 56 seconds behind him as he exits the pit lane. El Gerari's rejoined his 7th place, just behind the Alpha Tauri of Super Gabu, who pitted a couple of laps ago, didn't he, onto the wet tyres. This has given him track position, but not necessarily fresher tyres, although only 2 laps old, so it's not really a disaster for him. Rick's on much older tyres, but he's decided that he doesn't need the fresher tyres. He just wants the track position for now. And why not, to be fair, because he's P4. And as a result of all this, could be looking at getting himself back up onto the podium places, potentially looking at a victory if he can clear Evil Hunter and his teammate Laganis quickly enough. But that will be quite an ask, I have to say, because Dacinio's pace has been exceptional so far. He was also pushing Rick pretty hard in the early going of the Grand Prix before Rick's mistake put him down the order. Leganes has the lapped Mercedes between himself and the senior, that's Ribas, in 12th place and last of the current runners. So, several drivers going on to fresh sets of the wet tyres. Six of our drivers. Oh, as Ribas spins in the Mercedes, and as a result of that, Evil Hunter has gotten ahead of Leganes. And yeah, Leganes goes back in front. And will the game let him keep the place? Yes, it will. So, yeah, Ribas actually causing quite a lot of chaos there with the spin under the safety car. And what that has done is it has allowed... In fact, no, Ribas has stayed in front, hasn't he? Stayed in front of Leganes, which will be frustrating for the Renault driver. I was going to say what it has done is allowed Leganes a clear path to Decenio, but the Mercedes of Ribas, unfortunately, from a racing perspective, is still between them. Ribas does now pit, so he's no longer between them, and Leganes and Evil Hunter are now right behind Decenio. As we still wait for Shadow Moody to catch up. In fact, no, he's in the middle, isn't he? Yeah, he's right in the middle of this pack, is Shadow Moody. Ribas in the pits for Mercedes. It's another set of wet tyres for him. And away he goes. Of course, he is now just 2 positions outside of the points, but he's a lap down, so it's going to be quite difficult from here for himself and Shadow Moody to take a point scoring finish, unfortunately, from this Grand Prix. El Girari has a 5-second penalty as well for contact under the safety car. Of course, there is a concertina effect as the safety car speeds up and then slows down again, and that causes a bit of contact. Unfortunately, a few penalties get handed out as a result. I mentioned Jim Clark earlier, 4 wins in the Netherlands. He's one of 18 drivers to win here, and El Girari is out of the race. What's happened to him? I'm not too sure what has happened to that Alfa Romeo, but El Girari has gone out of this race by some way or other. I can't see his car anywhere. And that's El Girari out of the session, which is a real shock. Again, one driver who you were looking at and thinking he could get himself up into the podium places, but Decenio now. Safety car in this lap is going to lead Rick away. Evil Hunter. Excuse me, he's going to lead Leganes away. Evil Hunter and Rick right behind them. And Rick's got a penalty for contact with Evil Hunter. So once again, the concertina effect under the safety car playing havoc as Decenio waits for the safety car to come back into the pits. And he chooses his moment to go, and chooses very well indeed on the exit of the final corner. Leganes hasn't really gone with him. There's Evil Hunter. He's going to have a little bit of a run here on the Renault. Not quite close enough, though, for a move in towards turn 1. And look at this madness as Night Shadow gets ahead of Bloxham and now tries to get past Jack in the Alpha Tauri. Big Ben behind them getting involved in a bit of chaos as he looks to catch up to Super Gabu. Jack still fending off Night Shadow. Bloxham losing out to Night Shadow on the safety car restart, which has pushed him down to 9th place. Jack is ghosting through Shadow Moody in the Haas, who tries to get out of the way of this pack coming through. Rick now is just behind Evil Hunter as he looks to put that Renault now up into the podium places. Through the final chicane now And he's just lost a bit of time, hasn't he, through that chicane. Has Rick, which is going to cost him an opportunity of getting ahead on the run down towards turn 1. Here comes Night Shadow now around the final couple of corners. And he's going to have the run surely on Jack in the Alpha Tauri. And Jack just going to the inside, blocks him now, lapping Shadow Mooney. Night Shadow, nope, not close enough on the run down towards turn 1. Big Ben is being reeled in by both of these two as well. I think the slipstream from the Racing Point is just allowing Jack to stay ahead of the Ferrari for the time being, as Rick now falls just over a second behind Evil Hunter. So Evil Hunter's doing well pace-wise to just stay ahead of the runner of Rick, the pole sitter, of course, who looks set to lose out on the race win. And Desenio would be the 10th winner from outside the front row in the Dutch Grand Prix. Night Shadow all over the back of Jack. He's got more pace than the Alpha Tauri in front, but thus far can't find a way through. Oh, bit of contact there. That gets very close to both of them, spinning around. He's all over it, and he's going to be down the inside into the chicane now. He's got the run. No, not quite close enough to get ahead of him. Bloxham's going to be watching this battle closely just behind them, and he'll look to capitalise on any shenanigans that happen between these two. Between now and the end of this Dutch Grand Prix, which has been full of drama and incident, as Leganes sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. A yellow flag in the final sector momentarily, which has gone back in again. And is Jack close enough to Big Ben? Nope, not really. And there is Leganes with the fastest lap. We were thinking when Rick took pole there was going to be a winner in the shape of a yellow car. Leganes all of a sudden now finds himself back up where he started in this Grand Prix, which I don't think he thought he would manage after spinning into the wall early on in the race and costing himself his front wing. But some more incidents between then and now, and some more safety cars have allowed for some more racing. Oh, Big Ben's been in some battles and he's lost out to Night Shadow, and Rick has also been losing out in the Renault, so Rick's made a mistake somewhere. He's ended up behind Jack and also behind Night Shadow, and he's lost his front wing, so Big Ben gets past him as well. Bloxham will also get ahead. It's another mistake for Rick in the wet conditions. So frustrating for him as Night Shadow gets ahead of Jack, but runs slightly wide through turn 13. Jack is able to cut back underneath him. Big Ben's going to be watching this battle very closely as Jack follows Night Shadow through the final couple of corners. Night Shadow runs slightly wide. Will Big Ben have the run on these two down towards turn 1? No, I don't think he will. And looks as though Night Shadow's going to be able to keep hold of that position for the time being as Rick comes into the pits for Renault. So Rick's mistake putting the cats amongst the pigeons, which I think is what forced Big Ben to lose the positions to Jack and Night Shadow. And as a result of all that, Jack lost out to Night Shadow. Night Shadow took advantage of the opportunity and got himself ahead of the Alpha Tauri in amongst all the chaos caught by Rick's mistake. And away goes Rick now on the wet tyres. He will still be in the points in 9th place, but once again, just crucial mistakes costing Rick valuable points in the context of this World Championship. Here comes Night Shadow then, who is now right behind the other Alpha Tauri of Super Gabu. And what started out as a bit of a disaster in qualifying for Night Shadow could turn into a brilliant top 4 finish in this race. Jack is being pursued very closely as well by Big Ben, then blocks him just behind these two. And down towards turn 1 they go, and Big Ben, has he got the run? Is he close enough here to Jack down towards turn 1? No, he isn't. Has to settle behind the Alpha Tauri once again. And Night Shadow in an Alpha Tauri sandwich at the moment, ahead of Jack, just behind Super Gabu. through this first sector, this high-speed opening sector of the lap, down towards turn 8. Oh, Night Shadow puts a wheel on the grass, which is going to cost him a little bit of valuable time. It's going to put him a little bit further behind Super Gabu, and it's just going to allow Jack to get that bit closer. There is Jack being chased by Big Ben, who's being chased in turn by Bloxham in the McLaren. And is there going to be any changes of positions between this midfield pack between now and the end of the race? Decinio's extended his lead to Laganes by a few more tenths of a second. It's still just under 2 seconds, but 1.8 now is the gap when it was just over a second a little bit earlier on. Bloxham, the only McLaren left in this Grand Prix, has got a good run now on Big Ben on the run in towards the final couple of corners. But it's a very good exit, isn't it, from Big Ben out of turn 14, which I think is going to negate any run from the McLaren as Night Shadow streams past the AlphaTauri of Super Gabu on the run down towards turn 1, gets ahead and into 4th place now in this Dutch Grand Prix, but 13.5 seconds behind Evil Hunter in the last of the podium places at the moment. Big Ben again chasing Jack through turn 4, but once again just limited overtaking opportunities here in the Netherlands, as has been made clear by this Grand Prix. Of course, no DRS over the course of a wet race, and that's just making overtaking that bit more difficult at a track where it's already difficult enough, as Big Ben goes over the exit curb and does well to keep the back end in shape. Rick is now 26 seconds behind this pack as Bloxham follows Jack down towards the final chicane. Jack is actually closing a little bit on his teammate Super Gabu, so the leading AlphaTauri might be bored into this battle before too long. Laganes has actually managed to close the gap a little by a few tenths to Decinio. Still over a second between those two. And still line astern with these three, with Jack in front of Big Ben, and then Bloxham just behind those two. There is Laganes, who's set a purple first sector and is just starting to trouble Decinio a little bit more as we head towards the final couple of laps of this Dutch Grand Prix. All of a sudden the Renault here coming to life, and this could be a battle for the podium place, or excuse me, for the win, right down to the wire. He's now got it to within a second, and that Renault suddenly is flying. I don't know what's happened to Decinio's pace, but he's lost some time somewhere. He's losing a lot of time now to Laganes. He's streaking clear of the racing point of Evil Hunter behind him, who, as I mentioned, I don't think would have been expecting a podium finish after qualifying, but here he is now in 3rd place, looking ahead, a battle for the lead. Laganes, fastest lap of the Grand Prix, 1:22.1, still just over a second though, behind the leading Ferrari of Decinio. Big Ben once again looks to chase Jack down towards turn 1, but he's not going to be close enough for a move on the AlphaTauri. Same goes for Bloxham. He's not going to have the run on the racing point. Oh, goes for the late move into turn 1. It was too late, and he's hit the back of the racing point and spun round in the McLaren. That's gone horribly wrong indeed for Bloxham. I think he just got so frustrated being stuck behind the racing point. Went for an audacious move that wasn't really on, and ends up now spinning round, and that's going to well, it's going to cost him quite a bit of time to Rick, but actually he's still 24 seconds ahead of the second Renault. That's so frustrating for Bloxham. Just went for a position that wasn't really his to go for once they got into the braking zone of turn 1, but went for the move, and unfortunately it was to no avail, and in the end to his own detriment. Laganes, well, the gap is now up to 1.5 seconds as we head on to the final lap of the Grand Prix. So the senior lost a bit of time somewhere. He's gained that time back again. Shadow Moody's got a penalty. Rebus, who was on the Inters, has now come back into the pits. Out of the points in the Mercedes. Only one position outside of it, though, behind Shadow Moody. But there is Desenio. Started this race outside of the front row. Would become the 10th driver to win from below second. And it would be Ferrari's 10th victory as well at the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. In what has been a great performance. He got a very good start, did Desenio. Got himself right up behind Rick in the early going after Leganes had spun his Renault. And then Rick span, which gave Desenio the lead. And ever since then, Desenio, aside from Leganes' late flurry towards the end of the Grand Prix, hasn't really looked as though he's been in any position to lose this Grand Prix or to surrender the advantage. He was leading the championship coming into this evening's race here in Zandvoort. He's going to extend his championship lead now with an excellent performance. Desenio takes his 3rd win of the season and wins the Dutch Grand Prix. Leganes comes through to finish in 2nd. Evil Hunter takes the final podium place in 3rd. There's Night Shadow having started in 12th. It's a brilliant performance from him to come through for 4th. Same goes for Evil Hunter. 11th to 3rd for him. And there's Night Shadow across the line for 4th place. Super Gabu in the AlphaTauri is going to finish in 5th. And, yeah, stays behind Night Shadow, who had a penalty at the end. Big Ben finishes 7th. Bloxham eventually will come home for an 8th place finish. Went for the move on Big Ben towards the end. It didn't pay off for him. And as a result, he ends up down in 8th place. Rick is going to take 9th in the Renault. Shadow Moody will be in 10th in the Haas. And it's a good point scoring finish for him, having qualified down in 16th. But he does manage to take out the final point. But taking out the win is Desenio and Ferrari. An excellent drive from him in what is turning out to be an excellent championship season. And in the absence of Forza Ferrari, this looks very much Desenio's championship to lose from here on in. Didn't get the fastest lap point or the pole position point in the ARL, but he does take the race win. Leganes in 2nd for Renault. Evil Hunter takes 3rd. Night Shadow finishes in 4th. Jack is 5th in the AlphaTauri. Super Gabu 6th. Big Ben 7th. Bloxham in 8th. Rick finishes 9th. Shadow Moody takes out the final point in 10th. Rebus in 11th. And then a really long list of retirements. El Gerari, ASMD, Liverpool Fan, Jazzy, Jay Hartnell, Warrior Huntsman, and AS17 and Sadistic King, all out of the Dutch Grand Prix. Some big incidents at the start of the Grand Prix, and it meant that a couple of the front runners and a couple of the favourites for the podium and the race win left us early on in the Grand Prix. But it's Desenio, your race winner. It's Desenio who has cemented his championship lead now after round 8 in the Netherlands, following a blistering performance and once again a really frustrating evening for Renault. But for now, from us in the ARL, that's it.